Book Dragons! I am back for my May reading wrap-up. Now, I did not read a lot in May. I'm going to be real honest. May was a bit of a complicated month. I would say from like the middle of April to the middle of May, I had a rough reading month, and that has really nothing to do with reading. It was just I was focused on other things. That like month of time is always chaotic and always busy because my show typically goes up in the middle of May. Last year was the weird year that it went up a lot later, which I don't really like. So put it up early. It was a great time. The kids did such a good job. I'm like so proud of them. It was a very like Percy Jackson, like wizarding school sort of like vibe. And it just was such a fun time. And I've worked with these kids for 3 years in a row. So my emotions were a little bit chaotic, but we are done with that. I'm really, really proud of them. We're heading to the end of the year, but I normally do a mid-month wrap up, and I just did not. I just stopped filming at some point, so that is why I am here to wrap some stuff up. So we're gonna do stats, we're gonna talk about some stuff, and yeah, let's get into it. I will say, entertainment wise, I watched a ridiculous amount of The Last of Us. That is all I did. So at the end we'll talk a little bit more about that. But so stat wise, I read 11 books in May. I read 4,094 pages. I had a lot of shorter books and one massive book, so that's how the stats broke down. On average, I read 132 pages a day. I definitely did not do that, but like math-wise, that's what it said I did. My average page count was 372, which is actually higher than normal. I did have a couple of bigger books towards the end of the month, and I read a lot of fantasy romance. I read one book with rep, 7 from authors I read before, and I technically did not haul any books in May, but I'm working on adding those to my spreadsheet. I just didn't do that yet. I had 0 5-star, which is very, very sad, but it also was a bit of a weird reading month. I had 1 4.5 star, 6 4-star, 2 3.5 star, and that is about it for an average rating of 3.23. So no 5 stars. Yeah. I read 5 new releases, 5 backlists, 1 from last year. I read 3 physical, 7 audiobooks, and 1 mixed media. I started 2 series, I continued in 5, and I read 4 standalones. I read 2 adult, I read 2 YA and 9 adult. I read 2 ARC, 0 from Audible, 0 from KU, 0 from the library, 0 from Netgalley's, and 9 owned. I read 1 paranormal romance, 2 nonfiction, 3 fantasy romance, 3 mystery, 1 sci-fi, and 1 romance. And yeah, so let's get into it. I was also doing Escape the Readathon, and I had a really, really fun time with it. I'm honestly going to be honest, if I wasn't doing Escape, I don't know how much I would have read. So thank you, Lexi and Mel, for motivating me to do that. The first book I read was a nonfiction. It is The House of My Mother, A Daughter's Quest for Freedom by Shari Frankie. I will attach a photo here. This is a very interesting book about the 4 Passioners' daughter, and she kind of wrote a memoir. It was very, very interesting. I also watched the documentary that the family did. It was just very interesting seeing it from her point of view. And I know that like family vlogging is such a controversial topic, but these stories make me like very, very hesitant to like watch any more family vloggers, but I just felt really, really bad for her, and it was very, very interesting to see the story told from her point of view. I don't really rate nonfiction. I don't think it's fair to like rate someone's life story, but I actually really enjoyed it, and it was very, very fun. And then the next book that I read was Behooved by M. Stevenson, and this is kind of a wrong place, wrong time book. I think this book had great ideas. Basically, it's basically My Jane Eyre meets Legends and Latte, which I think is very, very accurate. And you have these 2 characters that have to kind of go on a magical adventure when they're kind of forced to marry. You have a woman that has a lot of like health issues, and then you have a guy that basically turns into a horse. And it was a fun read. I just didn't feel that connected to the characters. You're going to see that a little bit as a theme. I think the characters that I was reading this month didn't capture my attention, and I didn't love them. And it may have been because I was reading them very, very slowly, and I wasn't like reading them quickly. That's like what I find. If I read books quicker, I tend to feel more connected to the characters. But I liked it. I think that it was just a fun read. I don't think it was that memorable, and I think for a book that's like 322 pages, I think there was some pacing issues that I didn't feel that connected. But I did enjoy the characters. I think it was a fun read. Very, very cozy, light. There was like a quest element to the story. There was some spice in here as well. So I would give this book like 3.5 stars for review. It's not a new favorite, but I had a fun time with it. And then I read 3 Ellie Alexandra books. So I'm going to talk about them all in a row. I read A Cup of Holiday Fear, which I gave 3.5 stars to. I will attach a photo of that one. I read Nothing But Trouble, which I only gave 3.25 stars to. This book, obviously the first one was like a Christmas one and I liked it. This one was told in like a different way. It basically had Juliet reading her father's diary and watching a cold case in the past and kind of trying to solve it in the present. But the audiobook didn't change narrators, like boy and girl narrators, so it was hard to remember whose head you were in because it was all one narrator, which I didn't love that as much, and I think it didn't like help my confusion. I think I was confused like who was telling me the story. So I gave that one 3.25 stars, and then I read Children of the Comb, which I gave 4 stars. That was my favorite, and that was like basically them like moving their tort business to like an ice cream truck and like kind of doing that, and it was very, very summer-esque. That was my favorite, and then I had to stop because the next book in the series is it has like a competition element, and I have to read that for Amazing Readathon this month that I'm currently in. But all of these books are like about a bake shop in Oregon, and it's just a fun read. Like they're very, very fun. They're very, very quick. I literally would have just read so many more in May if I was not doing Escape, or I didn't need to save the book for Amazing, because I just love this series. It's such an easy palate cleanser, and when I'm struggling with focus, these books really do help. So I read 3 of those in a row. I gave them like between 3.25 and then 4 stars, but I really did like Children of the Comb. And then the next book I read was another ARC, and that is The Last Bookstore on Earth. This is when I was really in my Last of Us era. I was just trying to find stuff that like was targeted to that. So this literally says on the back, it's like, you know, Station 11 meets The Last of Us. And again, this book just was the characters I didn't like as much, but it basically follows these 2 characters, and there's like a wizard event, and they're kind of locked in this bookstore, and they're kind of forced to work together. And it was a fun sapphic romance. I don't think it was that memorable. I think the ending was very, very abrupt. It did give me Last of Us vibes, so for that it worked. I think the environment was fun, basically like survivalist and like trying to figure out how to save the day. But it wasn't as memorable as I would like, and I only gave this book 3.25 stars. And another book that was not that memorable was Enchantra by Kaylee Smith. I listened to the audiobook of this one. I only gave this book like 3.5 stars for review. I will attach a photo here. I'm not sure if this series is really for me. I am not really sure about that. I just know that it's not hitting right now. Like, I liked Phantasma. This one I enjoyed, but it's just not that memorable. And like, I didn't feel that connected to the characters, but this is like the second game. There was like a different competition. I liked it. I think I liked it a little bit better. I think I gave Phantasma like 4 stars. So maybe I like this one a little bit less. I don't really know. It just is not that memorable. I didn't like it as much, and I felt like disconnected to the characters a little bit. So I only gave it like 3.5 stars for review. And that is War of Pins. But I don't know. They're very, very quick, mindless listens. Very, very steamy. I just don't know if these books are for me, to be very honest. And the next book I read was Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver, and I gave this book 4 stars. I had such a fun time with this. Maybe like 4.5 stars. This was probably one of my favorites of the whole month. So take that for what it's worth, but here's the photo. And this is the second book in the Rose Hill series. It has a single dad romance. You have a main character who's a singer that is kind of being taken advantage of. So she kind of finds herself at Rose Hill. She's going to make music, and she kind of winds up falling for the music producer's brother. And he has 2 kids. And oh my God, the relationship between her and the kids was just so adorable and so cute. Maybe this is like maybe like a 5 star. I had such a fun time listening to this. I did not want to stop. And it was just such a refreshing read. There's some songs at the end as well. I love the single dad vibes. I love seeing the main characters from the previous book. And it was just a fun time. So maybe this is maybe one of my favorite books of the month. Maybe it is closer to 5 stars. But I had a very, very fun time with it. And then I read Silver Elite by Danny Francis, and I had such a fun time with this book. This book was like over 500 pages, and I read it in the last half of the month, and I just think that this book took me too long to read because I was dealing with so many issues of focus. I started this before my show and I finished it after my show. I think my mind was a bit fried. But this is a a dystopian story about a main character named Ren. I will say, if you have liked The Last of Us and you want a book that kind of gives you Ellie vibes, I would pick this book up. That's how I got this rack. I got this from Fairloot, I think. I know there's a lot of controversy about the author. Her using a pen name. People are upset. They want to know who it is. I don't care who it is right now, honestly. I just read the book and I had a fun time with it. And she basically has telepathic abilities, which is illegal. She was living with her uncle and then something happens and she's sent to this war college basically. And things go from there. Some of the things were very, very predictable, but it was a quick read. I really, really like the side characters and I'm curious to see where book 2 goes. So I had a fun time and I gave it 4.5 stars. If I would have read it quickly, it could have been a 5-star read for me, but this one was probably the closest to a 5-star along with what else that I had. And then I read my last book because I knew I probably wasn't going to read a nonfiction in June because of the amazing readathon. I read Women and Me by Britney Spears. I will attach a photo here. And this was her nonfiction she wrote a couple of years back. I read it because I was doing a prompt where you had to like read a book that like was based on the shirt you were reading for the escape. And my shirt I was wearing was like black and pink, I guess, or black and purple, and that's what the cover was. So I was like, I'll pick this up. It was quick, very, very interesting. I didn't know a lot about her, so just entertaining as well. But yeah, that is why I've read 2 nonfiction, because I didn't think I was going to read one in June. I could still, but I don't think I am. And yeah, I literally spent the entire month of May with my show that I put up and rewatching The Last of Us. And I really want to rewatch season 1 and season 2 before I kind of put the show to bed. But that is all that I did, and a lot of interviews and stuff like that. So let me know in the comments what you read in May. I would love to know, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.